please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
Good morning and welcome to Power Breakfast in the Mumbai News Centre. I am Anisha Jain and with me is the dapper-looking Nigel D'Souza. Good morning, Nigel. Looking fresh after a long weekend.
Well, Anisha, good to be back. And in fact, good to have you back. We missed you all of last week. Good to see that, in fact, you know, we're waking up to positive cues, but really heart goes out to what's going on in the United States. We had our own domestic mishap that took place at Elphinstone Station. So, you know, good for market watchers, but I'm sure the bulls and the bears, they'll give whatever gains they want up just to see, you know, this place in, you know, us live in better conditions.
Well, yes, that is hoping that the world becomes a better place and all these terrorist activities, at least, all these activities of violence really subside a bit. But first up, let's run you through the top stories at this hour. U.S. markets close at record highs as Wall Street kicks off the fourth quarter on a high note. Asia trades mixed. China and South Korean markets are shut for trade today.
And 59 people gunned down at the iconic Las Vegas Strip. Over 500 are left injured after a gunman opens fire at a packed music festival from his hotel room. The gunman is later found dead by police with 10 rifles.
CNBC TV18 Newsbreak confirmed Reliance Communication calls off its proposed merger with Aircel, but says that the deal for 51% tower-based sale to Brookfield still intact.
Well, the market regulator SEBI differs new guidelines with regard to disclosures of debt default by listed companies. That's just a day ahead of its implementation.
Automakers drive in robust sales in September, led by festive season and new offerings. Tata Motors sales rise 25%, while Maruti posts 10% growth. Royal Enfield continues its strong run.
And SBI Life Insurance will make its stock market debut today after raising 8,400 crore rupees in its initial public offering. Well, Asian markets are more or less mixed in early trade despite the US equities closing at record highs overnight. Markets, remember, in South Korea as well as China, they remain closed due to public holidays. But we have the Nikkei that continues to run along. The weakness that we are seeing in the yen is good news for exporters over there, and that explains why that market's holding with a gain of around 0.4%. Let's pull up a couple of other markets that are opened up this morning. The Straits and the Taiwanese index, both of them should be up. Well, more green than red is what we are seeing. But all of you must be wondering, after the long weekend, what is the SGX Nifty indicating? Now, keep your eye out on the screen. It's indicating a start at around 9,861. The Nifty futures, they closed in Friday's trading session at around 9,800. So that's, you know, 60 points away. And remember, the Nifty futures is trading with a premium of around 12 points. So all in all, you know, putting all those data points together, we would be expecting that the SGX Nifty should be opening up. You know, SGX Nifty is indicating a rate of around 9,860. So we should open up with a bump up of around 50 points if you want to, you know, go through that data point, because it's taking into account yesterday's move as well. So that's why, in fact, we should see a 50-60 point bump up.
Okay, so green Q as far as Nifty is concerned. But on Wall Street, the stocks hit higher and sitting at an all-time high, with the Dow Jones gaining over 150 points at close. The S&P 500 rose around 0.4%, led by gains in healthcare and financials. Now, even if you look at the Nasdaq Composite, that one closed around 0.3% higher. CNBC's Deirdre Bosa gets us a wrap of all the action on Wall Street.
U.S. markets finishing the day higher, the Dow tacking on 152 points, the S&P higher by 9, and the Nasdaq adding 20 points. A double dose of positive economic data hitting the tape Monday. The Institute for Supply Management survey, a key measure of U.S. manufacturing activity, hitting a 13-year high in September. Meanwhile, construction spending rebounding a bit in August. Both positive economic numbers come ahead of Friday's jobs report, which could give investors some clarity on when the next Fed rate hike is coming. Wells Fargo CEO Tim Sloan set to appear before Congress tomorrow, where he is testifying about the bank's phony account scandal. Prepared remarks released today show the bank executive will say the company was late in recognizing the scope and seriousness of the problem. And GM laying out its plans today to roll out 20 electric models by 2023. In the process, becoming the largest U.S. automaker to pursue what the company calls a, quote, all-electric future. 2 of these new electric vehicle models will debut in the next 18 months, according to the car maker. That's the action from the U.S. market. Back over to you in Mumbai.
And Las Vegas has witnessed the worst shooting in American history. At least 59 people killed and 527 injured after a lone gunman opened fire at a music festival. Remember, the 64-year-old shooter fired at concert goers outside the Mandalay Bay Resort on the iconic Las Vegas Strip from his hotel room on the 32nd floor. The police found him dead later in his room along with 10 rifles. U.S. President Trump has condemned the act as an act of pure evil. He will be visiting Vegas to meet the families of victims of the shooting on Wednesday.
It was an act of pure evil. The FBI and the Department of Homeland Security are working closely with local authorities to assist with the investigation, and they will provide updates as to the investigation and how it develops.
Well, in Europe, major indices closed largely in the green yesterday, though the Spanish IBEX was down close to around 1% on the back of growing political concerns following Sunday's unofficial independence referendum in the region of Catalonia. Let's stick to that then. Why exactly that Spanish index was lower? Remember, Spanish Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy may be forced to place constitutional trump card to attempt to restore order in Catalonia. Now, on Sunday, there was violence that erupted between activists and the Spanish police, who were seeking to shut down the region's independence referendum that has been deemed illegal by the nation's constitutional court. Spanish Prime Minister has now met the leader of opposition Socialist Party to figure out the next step in the Catalonian crisis. CNBC's Sri Jagaraja reports on the same.
Broadly, I think what we can say is that political uncertainty does seem to be back into the mix with regard to Europe and European assets as well. It did recede, didn't it, after the populists gained the upper hand after the French and the Dutch elections, but it seems to be back now in the spotlight after the German elections, and Merkel's showing wasn't as good as anticipated, and now in Spain, because Mariano Rajoy's very heavy-handed response that we saw over the weekend to that Catalan independence vote seems to have reinvigorated those independence aspirations as opposed to have quashed them. Catalan authorities are expected to make a unilateral declaration of independence in the coming days. Political analysts at Eurasia Group say that may invite an even more forceful response from Madrid. Economically, let me just stress this, there is a lot at stake here because Catalonia represents about 1/5 of overall Spanish GDP. It's an important heartland for tourism, important for manufacturing and industry as well. And let's not forget that the Catalans have also called a number of general strikes, and that could affect economic activity. So in terms of the markets, and I suppose the cleanest expression of all of this is the action in the single European currency. In isolation, the response has been relatively muted. We have seen some weakness in the single European currency, and I don't think Catalonia in and of itself is really enough to cause any lasting damage to the single currency.
Okay, let's shift focus then to the currency space. The dollar there has gained against the euro and the yen as investors took a bullish view of the US economy, and as the single currency was hurt by a violent marred independence vote in Spain's Catalonia region. The dollar was boosted by data showing that US factory activity surged to a more than 13-year high in September amid strong gains in new orders and raw material prices.
Okay, then in the world of commodities, and crude oil prices extend some losses as optimism surrounding an apparent rebalancing of the market began to fade following news of increase in Iraqi production and also a rise in US oil rig counts. That's why, in fact, we have some red on the screen in terms of Brent as well as NYMEX.
And from the precious metal space, gold fell to its lowest since mid-August on Monday as rising US Treasury yields pushed the dollar higher, while concerns over violence during Catalonia's independence vote at the weekend weighed on the euro. Well, back home on the Wall Street, the markets pared gains towards the close to end flat on Friday as buying by domestic institutional investors and retailers saved the day amid a strengthening rupee. But how's the market setup for today looking like? Let's bring in Naveen Shetty to tell us more on that. Good morning, Naveen. Tell us more.
So, Anisha, good morning. Basically, if you see the global markets, there are more or less more positive cues, and the global markets, they have been resilient to the happenings, maybe the political turmoil in Spain as well as the attacks on Las Vegas. So then you see a Dow, which is at record highs, which was up 0.7% in yesterday's trade. Even the European index, the likes of CAC as well as DAX, ended in the green. Now, talking about back home, there are more fundamental positives to be seen from the auto sales numbers. Although almost 40 to 50% of the companies have posted their auto sales numbers, the likes of Maruti, Eicher, Bajaj Auto, Tata Motors. But remember, these companies have been posting strong numbers. Maruti was in line, but if you see the likes of Bajaj Auto as well as Tata Motors, they have been given strong positive surprises. So I expect that to have a positive rough-off on the overall markets in today's trade. Also, the fund flows on Friday, if you see, that have been more or less continuing with the same pattern of net institutional sell buy in the cash market by FIIs. On the other hand, net buys by DIs. But the heartening point to see over here is the net institutional buying. That was close to 520 crores. So that comes in as a positive. On the other hand, talking about Friday's trade, as you pointed out in the last hour, we saw some by a bit of a selling, and the markets ended more or less flattish. The key point need to be seen over here is going ahead, will the Nifty be able to break that 9,800 mark in terms of the closing? For the last 3 sessions, there is some resistance that has been seen in terms of the closing above 9,800. So that will be a key point. Talking about the support level, the 100-day moving average at around 9,773. That remains to be a key support. So 2 points to note out is whether the Nifty will be able to break out of the 9,800 mark in terms of the closing, and support seen at around 9,773.
Okay, all right, Naveen, that made a lot of sense then. I remember in Friday's trading session, the bulls thought they're going to go to the long weekend with big gains, and then suddenly in the last hour of trade, we did see the Nifty end as far as can be, Naveen, as you said. What about some stocks that we can look out for today?
Auto stocks clearly are supposed to be in focus, Nigel, in today's trade. So I'll begin with the companies which came out with their numbers over the long weekend. So we had the likes of Eicher, which posted strong set and consistent set of numbers, 22% growth in their Royal Enfield business. On the other hand, Bajaj Auto, that was a big surprise. The overall sales were up 14%, yeah, but it was pushed by the export sales as well as the two-wheelers. Tata Motors, again, a positive. Maruti in line set. Now, today, we are expecting numbers from Escorts, the likes of Hero, Ashok Leyland, M&M as well as TVS. So keep an eye on these stocks in today's trade. On the other hand, Reliance Communication clearly will be in focus on the back of the breaking up of merger with Aircel. Remember, the company had few debt reduction plans through this merger. Now they are going for some alternative plans. That is what their press release said. Dr. Reddy's, the company has launched a Sevelamer carbonate tablet in US. So keep an eye on Dr. Reddy's. Also PNC Infra. Order win for that company of close to 2,200 crore. Also, this order is for a period of 15 years. The operational period is close to 15 years. And remember, the total order book as of June is close to 5,000 crore. Peninsula Land, the company will be selling land for close to 230 crore. The total debt in the books is around 1,200. So significant positive for Peninsula Land. SAIL has got an upgrade from CARE, and they have revised their rating to, in fact, a downgrade. They have revised their rating to AA- negative from AA. Also, India Bulls Ventures, the company will be raising close to 2,000 crore via a rights issue. On the other hand, Jubilant Life Science has also received an approval from the Health Canada. On the other hand, Cadila Healthcare, again, new launch for this company. Zydus receives final approval for US FDA, and Gulf Oil Lubricant has proposed to set up a greenfield capacity worth 1 lakh kiloliter for the cost of 750 crores. So some capacity expansion coming in for Gulf Oil. Back to you.
Well, CNBC TV18's news break has been confirmed. Anil Ambani-led Reliance Communications has called off its much-anticipated merger with Aircel. Reliance Communications cited regulatory delays and opposition from creditors for the deal failing through. In fact, they said that they're looking at alternative ways to reduce that big debt, including sale of some real estate assets, as well as optimization of spectrum. Kritika has been on top of that particular story. She joins in with all those details. Kritika.
Bang in line with what we had reported, Aircel and Aircel have called off the talks to merge their wireless business. Now, here's the reason that Aircel has cited: legal regulatory uncertainties, interventions by vested interests causing inordinate delays to get approval, unprecedented competition in the sector, and fresh policy directives that have hit the financing in the telecom sector. So that's what Aircel is pointing out. Now, as far as what happens now, will they really be able to pay that debt, which is currently at over 55,000 crore rupees? Aircel says that there are 3 to 4 areas that they're looking at for monetization, which should be able to get them 25,000 crore rupees. They say that they want to sell or monetize their spectrum portfolio, which is valued at 19,000 crore rupees. Whether that is a viable or a fair sum is a question mark. They currently have 2,000 megahertz across spectrum bands. The second is a monetization of part or complete sale of their DAKC, that is the Dhirubhai Mani Knowledge City. It's a 125-acre park. Again, it's a big question mark given the kind of valuation and given the kind of an environment right now, if that will go through. And the other is the sale of their tower asset, which will bring them about 11,000 crore rupees, which is, yes, expected to go through. Aircel now says that they will only be focusing on the enterprise, carrier, internet data center and global submarine business, and they're clear that they want to exit the remaining portion. For now, the SDR standstill continues till December 2018. They have said that they are in talks with lenders to talk out and chalk out a detailed debt reduction plan to see on what lies going ahead.
Okay, Kritika, thank you. So a setback coming in for Reliance Communication for its deleveraging efforts. But Kritika, since you are with us, also tell us about TCS. Now that one has got a relief, I figure, because the US court has more than half the compensatory and punitive damages imposed on the company in a lawsuit filed by Epic Systems. Take us through those details as well.
Well, just to give you a quick background, TCS has been in a legal case with Epic Systems, which had said that there was misuse by TCS in case of some documents. Now, a U.S. Western District Court in Wisconsin has reduced the damages that it had slapped on TCS last year in April 2016. Last year, they had said that damages worth of about $940 million could be what TCS would have to pay if it was found guilty in this case. They have reduced this damage to $420 million. But remember, this is still a case that is being fought in court. So while, yes, that reduction of damage is a huge plus for TCS, given that overhang on TCS gets reduced now, it is still not certain that TCS will have to pay that. If the court in due time after the end of the trial votes in favor of TCS, then that entire case is scrapped altogether. TCS on its part has said that a strong appeal can be made to a superior court to fully set aside the jury verdict. The company, it reiterates, did not misuse or derive any benefit from Epic's documents, and TCS plans to defend its position vigorously before the trial judge as well as in its appeal.
Well, Reliance Communication has called off its much anticipated merger with Aircel. To analyze the impact that will have on the banks, Lata Venkatesh joins us now. Good morning, Lata. Clearly a setback for the deleveraging efforts that Reliance Communication was taking.
Yes, actually we keep saying Relcom, but Relcom's total loans is perhaps about 42,000 crores, of which about $1.5 billion was to Chinese banks. Now there is still a lot of doubt as to how much exactly is the Indian banks' share. It's probably 30,000 crores according to some, but it could be even less because some of it could be ECB. So perhaps 25,000 crores. Okay. There is another 25,000 crores of Aircel. So together the hit could be between 50 to 55,000 crores. What happens to Relcom itself? There was a standstill. It was allowed not to get into NPA because of the strategic debt restructuring. In strategic debt restructuring, strictly there should be some of the equity stake should go over to some other party. Now, if it is not going to Aircel, what happens? Banks have to take it on themselves. Right. So some little unlikely. There is time till December 31st, but I doubt banks will be having the courage to allow it to become an NPA this year because it'll be a large hit. And therefore, chances are that they will take that 26%. The names of the banks, SBI, BOB, I think, are the larger exposures. And then you have most of the other big PSU banks, Bank of India, PNB. As well, if I remember right, Yes Bank has a minor bridge financing, which it extended to Relcom. So these will be weighed down till you can find a solution. As well, now that there is no merger, the towers will not fetch the same amount of money, because the towers were expected to fetch money because a large entity will use them. So Brookfields will, of course, fetch something, but not the same. And it's a long process. You know, you don't sell land in a day. As you know from the JP issue as well, land for loans can be swapped, but all that will take a long time. So this is going to be sticky. Sentiment negative, definite for today.
All right, you know, that reminds me when you're going for an engagement and you happen to lend your best friend money for the engagement, and then suddenly they call off the engagement and you're left high and dry. All right, so that's about you know, the banking stocks. But what could be some relief for listed companies? Market regulator SEBI has deferred new guidelines with regard to disclosure of debt default. Lata, run us through all those details.
Well, actually, in the initial, the first impact is that it's going to be definitely a big relief for leveraged companies and for banks. Now, I'm only trying to guess what could have happened. Probably for the last 58 days, people have, you know, ignored the problem, and suddenly it hit, you know, the government, corporate sector and banks on the penultimate day or the penultimate week, especially after CNBC TV18 started saying that, you know, October 3 is here, October 3 is here. This needs discussion. And therefore, I think it's sensible to have pulled it back, because in that current state, it would have been extremely disruptive. Chances are that the government prevailed upon SEBI, because already banks, companies are going through the GST disruption. Further disclosures could be, you know, could disrupt things. Once a disclosure is made public, a default disclosure, then rating agencies will have to downgrade, and downgraded companies will require more capital. Okay. So banks will be under pressure, government will be under pressure to give more capital. I mean, it's a long chain. It may be, disclosure is always good, but how much, within what time, and one day can be even a technical reason, and therefore probably you must give them disclosure time till, like the RBI has 90 days for NPA, you also give 90 days of default and then disclose. Something will have to be done. Disclosure per se may be good, but it was too radical, and therefore today expect some relief for leveraged companies and banks.
Okay, Lata, thank you so much for that. But on to the pharma space now. Dr. Reddy's will be in focus today as the company has launched a generic version of Renvela in US. Ekta is here to tell us the impact. Good morning, Ekta. Over to you.
Hi, thanks for that. Well, yes, we had pointed this out last week itself that Dr. Reddy's is likely to launch and get approval for Renvela generic, and that's exactly what's taken place. Now, just to give you a brief history about Renvela generic, it is a market size of around $1.8 billion, and it is a kidney drug. So basically, it's used for kidney purposes. It's used for kidney purposes, and the thing is that Aurobindo had received approval some time ago. They had launched it in the month of July. They had limited competition on it. It's a very complex generic API which the company uses in order to get to the limited in order to get to the final product. Now, Dr. Reddy's, remember that just a couple of days ago they had received an EIR, or an establishment inspection report, for their Unit 1 SEZ from Srikakulam, and that had pretty much paved the way. It's a formulation plant for them to probably launch Renvela generic. So it is going to be an important opportunity for them. It will also depend on how many other competitors come into the market. But if in case it is limited competition, i.e. which is Aurobindo, Dr. Reddy's and maybe the innovator in the market, then they can make up to at least around $50 million per annum from that particular drug.
Okay, Ekta, thanks so much for giving us all those details. Well, festive cheer drives in strong auto sales numbers for September.